Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show where we unpack fascinating topics and extract the most important nuggets of knowledge and insight just for you. Today, we're doing a deep dive into Ali Hazelwood's Love, theoretically, and this is based on a really detailed summary that you, our listener, thoughtfully provided. Our mission today isn't just, recapping a romance novel. We're going to explore how love, theoretically, is actually far richer and, well, more complex than maybe your typical rom-com. We'll be digging into the intense workplace drama, the relentless academic precarity, and the really deeply personal stakes for its protagonist, Elsie Hannaway. And here's where it gets really interesting. We're going to look at the collision of this brilliant theoretical physicist's meticulously compartmentalized life. I mean, her struggle to survive in academia while secretly moonlighting as a paid fake girlfriend. And then, bam, this high-stakes job interview forces her to confront the very man who undermined her mentor and, her entire professional community.
Yeah, it's quite the setup. And at its core, this story introduces us to Elsie Hannaway, who is, a truly brilliant theoretical physicist. Now, for those maybe less familiar with the academic world, a theoretical physicist like Elsie, she focuses on abstract concepts, mathematical models. It's often contrasted with experimentalists, the ones doing lab-based research and tests. But despite Elsie's huge intellect, she's precariously employed.
An adjunct professor.
Right, adjunct professor. And that really means for a lot of people in academia, temporary work, often part-time contracts, no benefits, no job security, right? It just sounds like constant uncertainty.
Absolutely. The source material really emphasizes she's quite literally cobbling together a living. She's navigating a system that, frankly, undervalues theoretical work and chronically underpays the people who do it. It's a tough reality. Yeah. And what's just non-negotiable for Elsie, absolutely critical to understanding, every choice she makes is her type 1 diabetes, the cost of insulin, the constant calculations, blood sugar levels alongside teaching, the sheer anxiety of managing her health while trying to perform at peak mental capacity. It all feeds into her decisions. That tenure-track position, it isn't about vanity or prestige for her, is it? It's about safety. Survival.
Exactly. Survival.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking, really, how her medical reality just amplifies that precarity you mentioned.
Yeah.
And you see Elsie's temperament established pretty early on. She's got this quick wit, she's self-deprecating, fiercely loyal, but she's also described as an over-adapter. Someone who uses that wit and charm to kind of smooth things over, to fit in, but often it keeps others at a distance. This tendency to wear masks is absolutely central to her character arc.
That over-adapter idea is fascinating. So she's brilliant, but always sort of performing. How does that mask play out when she's trying to make a good impression, but also maybe keep people away?
Well, it creates this constant tension, doesn't it? This internal conflict.
Yeah.
And that pressure, it pushes her into some pretty unconventional paths to cope.
It certainly does, because speaking of masks, that ties directly into her secret life, doesn't it? She's juggling this incredibly unique side gig. Tell us about the Faux app.
Right, so she moonlights through this app called Faux. It's basically a service where people hire her to be their paid fake girlfriend for social events, that kind of thing. It's a classic example, really, of economic necessity driving these unique solutions. This job serves a very practical purpose for Elsie. It helps her make ends meet, manage those critical health costs we talked about.
A paid fake girlfriend. Okay, that just instantly sets up so many intriguing possibilities and, well, as the book shows, complications. And it also sets up this key relationship, right? A friendly one with a client named Greg. But his family connection, which Elsie has no idea about, is going to complicate things dramatically later on.
And that brings us right to the novel's central conflict. Elsie is interviewing for this incredibly prestigious tenure-track professorship. It's at a top-tier institution described as having MIT-style prestige. So for anyone unfamiliar, that implies, a level of academic excellence, groundbreaking research, really competitive hiring. It sets the standard globally. This job represents the end of her financial precarity, sure, but also the professional validation she desperately needs.
Okay, so she's aiming for the absolute top. But this isn't just any academic department she's walking into. It's described as being riven by old wounds. Can you maybe paint a picture of why this particular place is so fraught?
Yeah, it's definitely an environment burdened by its past. Specifically, there's this experimentalist, remember, the lab-based researcher's type named Jonathan Smith Turner. He apparently orchestrated, sometime in the past, a public scandal and a paper attraction. That's when a published academic paper gets formally withdrawn because of serious errors or fraud. And this event, it profoundly damaged the theoretical physics community there, and it hurt people Elsie cares about very deeply. So this sets up a lot of underlying politics, personality clashes, that classic experimentalist versus theorist dynamic, plus old departmental grudges.
Wow, it sounds like a complete minefield she's walking into for this crucial interview.
It really is.
Yeah.
And the dramatic collision happens pretty much as soon as she arrives for the interview events. She discovers that Greg's brother, her nice, supportive client, Greg. Yes, his brother is none other than Jonathan Smith Turner, known as Jack, the famed experimentalist, a member of the hiring committee, the exact man responsible for undermining her mentor and her community. And unlike some tropes where a character might try to hide or run away from that kind of revelation, Elsie is just, boom, forced immediately into a direct confrontation. There's no hiding.
Oh my gosh, okay. And their initial relationship is, well, incredibly antagonistic, right? Jack is blunt, infuriating, seems to see right through all her careful defenses. And Elsie, naturally, is defensive. She's exhausted. She's used to masking her vulnerability. This friction, this kind of barbed back and forth, that becomes the engine for the whole story, doesn't it? Driving the tension and eventually their intimacy.
It's a classic setup, but done really well here.
Yeah.
On the surface, Jack, or Jonathan, he's initially portrayed as, a classic Ali Hazelwood alpha, brilliant, blunt, confident, a renowned experimentalist, big reputation, sharp intellect, undeniable.
Okay, what defines that alpha archetype in her books generally, and how does Jack maybe deviate from it? Because the summary mentioned he avoids being just a simple villain.
That's a great point. In Hazelwood's novels, the alpha is often this brilliant, maybe brooding, somewhat dominant male lead whose bluntness often hides, a deeper sensitivity or hidden depths. Jack fits that mold at first glance. But the novel gives him a lot more texture. He's someone who's clearly been shaped by the pressures of academia, maybe a somewhat protected upbringing. And while he was definitely involved in that incident that damaged the theorists, the story shows his fallibility, his capacity for growth. He's much more complex than just, say, a bombastic, sexist caricature.
So he's not just a flat antagonist, then. How does the novel let us see beyond that initial, maybe abrasive exterior? What softens him or complicates him?
It's actually through his bluntness, ironically enough. While it's initially so infuriating for Elsie, it kind of becomes this conduit for authenticity in their relationship. He forces these direct conversations that start peeling away Elsie's pretense, pushing her towards vulnerability.
That seems counterintuitive. That his bluntness would lead to authenticity, especially for someone like Elsie who relies on masks. How does that dynamic work?
Well, it's precisely because he's so blunt that her usual social strategies just don't work on him. He sort of forces her out of her comfort zone, right? And that discomfort ultimately is what leads to a genuine connection. And that also leads into Jack's own really significant character arc. He has to reckon with the consequences of those old departmental politics, and he slowly starts to recognize the humanity in the people he previously just saw as theoretical opponents. It's a journey of him seeing beyond the labels,
That makes sense. Seeing the person, not just the physicist type.
Exactly. And the interview visit itself is depicted as this real pressure cooker environment. It's just filled with grueling seminars, formal dinners, and what the source calls academic theater, which I think perfectly captures the performative nature of these high-stakes events. Every interaction feels like a subtle test, right, of competence, of fit. Elsie is constantly being judged, not just on her research and teaching, but on her whole professional comportment.
And that department's old wound, that whole hoax and paper retraction thing, plus the faculty's existing biases towards experimental work, it creates this subtle but constant friction throughout all of Elsie's meetings, doesn't it? It's like this undercurrent of tension. And it's made worse because Jack, the powerful guy at the center of that past conflict, is right there on the hiring committee. It's not just some minor squabble. It casts a long shadow over everything.
Indeed it does. And Jack's role in this pressure cooker is really telling. He immediately recognizes and actually calls out Elsie's socially adaptable way of presenting herself. And he does it with this uncompromising frankness, which deeply unsettles her because her usual ways of navigating social stuff, they just bounce off him. Their intellectual sparring often kind of slides into what feels like this rhythmic flirtation, but it's always charged with that underlying tension.
That sounds incredibly unnerving for someone like Elsie who's so used to adapting on the fly. What's the impact of him being so direct, calling her out like that?
Well, it strips away her defenses, basically. It makes her feel exposed, but also, paradoxically, maybe seen for the first time. And there's a particularly consequential scene that happens right in the middle of that chaotic interview weekend. It's a private argument where Elsie is finally forced to articulate why this job matters so much more than just prestige. She explains, really raw and vulnerable, that it matters for her survival. Literally.
Ah, okay. That's where the stakes become incredibly personal. When she lays out the reality of her health, her financial situation, what does that revelation do to Jack and to their dynamic? How does he react?
It shifts things profoundly. When Jack truly gets the fundamental life or death reason behind her ambition, their dynamic moves away from just adversaries to something much more complex, almost allied. It's a huge moment of understanding between them.
Okay, so the relationship starts to change. But the world isn't just Elsie and Jack.
Not at all. The novel is really enriched by its supporting characters. Let's start with Greg, Elsie's faux client. He's portrayed as refined, gentle, supportive, almost a bit of a parental figure, actually. Greg is a friend who offers practical help and just a much-needed perspective for Elsie. And importantly, he's not a romantic competitor. He really highlights Elsie's capacity for real friendship, for consentful boundaries, and he also reveals aspects of Jack's personal life, his family dynamics, without meaning to.
He sounds like a really refreshing counterpoint to all the intense academic drama. What unique role does he play beyond just being her client? Does he know about Jack initially?
He doesn't seem to, not the extent of the conflict. For Elsie, he represents this kind of safe space, a place where she can just be without the constant fear of judgment, which is something she desperately needs outside of all those academic pressures.
Right. Then there's Cece, Elsie's roommate and best friend. I feel like every protagonist needs a Cece, don't they? How does she help ground Elsie amidst all this chaos?
Oh, absolutely. Cece is essential. She brings the comic relief, a dose of realism, and just crucial emotional support. She's that vital sounding board for Elsie, always reminding her of her worth, encouraging self-care, and delivering the blunt, honest advice that Elsie sometimes struggles to give herself. She's definitely the anchor in Elsie's personal life.
Okay, so she's the reality check. And then there's Dr. Lauren Doe, Elsie's mentor. His story sounds, well, more tragic, like a stark warning about the human cost of academic politics. What kind of broader insight does his fate offer us?
Yeah, his arc really embodies the sometimes generational cruelty of academia and the painful cost of those departmental politics we mentioned. It illustrates how institutions can just abandon the very people who built them up. His story serves as this powerful cautionary tale, really deepening the novel's critique of academic hierarchies and showing the lasting damage these systems can inflict on individuals. It's quite somber.
Definitely sounds like it adds another layer of seriousness to the critique. And finally, the various departmental faculty and committee members. So they're not just a faceless committee deciding her fate. How do these different figures deepen the novel's critique of academia?
Exactly. They're not just a monolith. They serve as these microcosms of the broader academic culture. You see a whole range of motivations playing out. Some faculty seem genuinely interested in equitable hiring, but others, they're clearly driven by a rigid desire to preserve the status quo, old prejudices, personal loyalties. So this isn't just background noise. They embody the whole spectrum of influences that shape an institution's decisions, often with really profound impacts on individuals like Elsie.
Right, shows the complexity of the system itself.
Now, about the romance arc,
hmm
the transition from that initial antagonism to intimacy between Elsie and Jack, it's really gradual, very carefully textured. Their chemistry builds through conversation. Think late-night intellectual fights that slowly turn into honest admissions, small but significant kindnesses. Hazelwood uses their physical interactions, too, to punctuate these emotional shifts, making their deepening connection feel really earned.
So it's not just a sudden switch then. How does Hazelwood make that shift from enemies, or at least antagonists, to something more intimate, feel so believable? What's the foundation?
I think it's by allowing them to genuinely understand each other's vulnerabilities and struggles. It's built on this grudging, then growing respect for each other's intellect, even when they fundamentally disagree on things. And what's crucially fascinating here, as we touched on, is Elsie's gradual disclosure of her health challenges and her financial precarity. Jack's reaction is key. It's not performative sympathy. He actively helps and advocates for her in really practical ways.
Okay, this feels critical. How does Jack's practical, non-performative support maybe redefine the hero archetype in romance, especially given Elsie's specific vulnerabilities with her health and finances?
That's a great way to put it. It shifts the focus from grand romantic gestures to, well, concrete everyday allyship. He truly learns to recognize the systemic barriers she's up against, and he uses his own institutional influence not to rescue her, but to genuinely ally with her, advocating for more equitable practices. And Elsie, in turn, undergoes this huge growth. She learns to stop performing constant competence for everyone else, and crucially, to allow herself what the text calls imperfect care.
Imperfect care. So it's not just about her finding love, but also finding a new way to exist in the world, maybe. What does that phrase imperfect care really mean in this context?
I think it means allowing herself to be vulnerable, right? To lean on someone, to accept help, even when it feels like admitting weakness. It's about letting go of that need to be perfect all the time. And this emotional reciprocity, this give and take, makes their romance so much more than just a cliche. It becomes this negotiation of power, dignity, and mutual respect, deeply rooted in their shared understanding of each other's reality.
Okay, so the personal and professional are deeply intertwined, which leads us to the climax. The novel's climax sounds like it's both romantic and professional. The hiring committee's deliberations apparently reveal these incredibly high stakes of departmental politics. We get scenes that pull back the curtain on behind-the-scenes machinations, old grudges resurfacing, even hints of patronage in hiring decisions. This sounds like it really exposes the often hidden world of academic decision-making. What's really at stake here beyond just Elsie's job offer?
Oh, far more than just Elsie's job. It feels like it's about the integrity of the whole department, really. It's about the legacy of her mentor, Dr. Lauren Doe. And it's about confronting those systemic biases that have clearly plagued this corner of academia for years. Elsie's candidness about her background, her mentor's mistreatment, the harsh realities of adjunct life, it ultimately forces the department, or at least parts of it, to reckon with its own complicity in a flawed system. Her directness becomes this pivotal moment for potential institutional accountability.
Interesting. So her vulnerability, the very thing she tried to hide, becomes her strength in forcing the system to actually look in the mirror.
Exactly. And there are both public and private reckonings happening. Jack has to confront his own past complicity, or maybe just indifference, to a culture that allowed the theoretical community to be discredited like that. Meanwhile, the faculty as a whole, represented by the committee, grapples with how their structures, their decisions, actively harm real human beings.
And Jack's role here seems crucial then, moving from that past complicity to active advocacy for her. What does that arc suggest about individual responsibility within these larger systemic issues?
I think it's a powerful statement, really, that while institutional change is incredibly slow and difficult, accountable individuals can make a difference. The job outcome itself suggests reform, but it avoids a naive fairy tale ending. Institutional change is portrayed as slow, partial. But the novel makes it clear that individuals who take responsibility can indeed shift things, even if just a little. Elsie's victory feels complex. It's a mix of relief, yes, but also maybe some rage and grief for those like her mentor who lost out before her.
Okay, so wrapping this up, what does this all mean? We've definitely seen that love, theoretically, is far more than just a simple rom-com. It's this deeply compassionate portrait of a woman navigating a pretty hostile professional landscape, all while longing for genuine connection and, frankly, security. This novel isn't just a romance. It feels like a critical lens on the modern academic world, highlighting how institutions can sometimes fail their most brilliant minds, forcing them into impossible choices just for basic survival.
Absolutely. And I think the novel really succeeds because Elsie is never reduced to just a stereotype. Her intelligence, her medical realities, her profound emotional needs, they're all deeply interwoven, making her feel incredibly real. The romance feels gratifying precisely because it's earned. Both partners genuinely change and grow, and the story consistently honors Elsie's agency, her choices. It really makes you question what we value in education and how we support the people pursuing it, doesn't it?
It really does. And the ending seems to bring it home. Love can be ordinary and fiercely practical. It's shown in things like sharing medication knowledge, advocating for equitable hiring practices, just being present during a blood sugar check. Elsie finally finds a place of security, it seems, where she can pursue her science without that constant grinding fear that defines so much of her earlier life.
Yeah, and ultimately, this story highlights just how profoundly intertwined our personal well-being is with our professional environment and with the systemic support or lack thereof available to us. It makes you wonder, doesn't it, how many brilliant minds might be out there struggling in similar situations, just trying to survive while pursuing their passion. So a final thought perhaps for you, the listener. How do you see these themes, academic precarity, the importance of real allyship, the courage it takes to show vulnerability playing out in your own life or in the fields you observe?
Something to think about. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today.